When we think of a sanctuary, we usually picture a fortress, you know?
Right, yeah. High walls, heavy iron gates.
Yeah, exactly. Well, wait, I can't say exactly. I mean, we think of guards standing watching.
Yeah,
A physical place designed with real intention to keep the bad out and the good safe inside.
definitely. A stronghold.
But what if the strongest fortress was not made of stone at all?
Oh, that is a great
What
call.
if the highest wall was constructed out of pure social disgust?
Yeah.
Welcome to Reformed Thinking. Today, we are looking at how a deep-seated institutional hatred for sheep ended up saving the most crucial family tree in human history.
It is wild when you think about it.
It really is. We are spending our time today on a deep dive into Genesis 46, taking an exhaustive look at verses 28 through 34. We are going to see this fascinating historical moment where divine providence uses ordinary human decisions and even intense cultural prejudice to protect an entire nation. So, for everyone listening, keep this question in the back of your mind as we go. How did an ancient cultural taboo manage to secure a bloodline that would alter the course of the world?
Yeah, because we are looking at a moment of severe historical whiplash here.
Whiplash is a good word for it.
I mean, what appears on the surface to be this, touching family reunion is actually the strategic relocation of the covenant seed into a hostile empire.
Right. It is not just a bunch of guys hugging.
No, not at all. This empire is going to act as a temporary incubator for their survival. The stakes are massive. They stretch far beyond the immediate survival of 70 starving people.
So, before we get to the emotional reunion between Jacob and his son Joseph, I feel like we need to talk about the extreme circumstances driving this migration.
Oh, for sure. We have to set the stage.
Because they are not casually packing up and moving south for better weather, right? This is an absolute crisis of survival.
Yeah, we need to set the date and location to really grasp the gravity of their reality.
Okay, so where are we in history?
The timeline places us roughly around 1876 BC.
Okay.
We are stepping into the Middle Kingdom of Egypt. Specifically, this is the late 12th or early 13th dynasty.
Which means what, politically?
Well, the political landscape of this era is defined by highly centralized administrative authority.
So not just local warlords.
Right, no. Previous eras of Egyptian history saw regional governors operating with a lot of independence, but by this point, the pharaohs had totally consolidated control.
And they built this massive agrarian bureaucracy, right? I mean, Egypt was the ancient world's breadbasket.
Absolutely. Largely due to the agricultural capacity of the Nile River.
Right. The whole civilization was structured around the predictable flooding of the Nile.
Sure.
And the government had established these vast centralized storage systems.
Yeah, and right as this highly structured, immensely dominant empire reaches a peak of administrative efficiency, this catastrophic environmental crisis hits the surrounding regions.
The famine.
Right. A severe 7-year famine grips the ancient Near East. It just decimates the agricultural output of the Levant.
Which is the region where Jacob and his family reside.
Yes. So you have this massive starvation event, forcing nomadic and semi-nomadic populations to seek sustenance in the Nile Delta.
Because it is the only place left on Earth with food.
Basically, yeah.
And among those desperate populations is Jacob's household.
Yeah.
We are talking about 70 people.
Just a drop in the bucket compared to the empire.
Right. Picture a tiny, vulnerable family startup being forced to walk into the ruthless corporate headquarters of the world's biggest monopoly, just begging for a handout.
That is a great way to put it.
They are walking into an administrative machine that could crush them, enslave them, or, just absorb them without a second thought. And Jacob knows this.
Oh, he is terrified.
Yeah.
In Genesis 46, before they even cross the border into Egyptian territory, Jacob stops at Beersheba.
Right.
And God speaks to him in visions of the night, saying, fear not to go down into Egypt, for I will there make of thee a great nation. I will go down with thee into Egypt, and I will also surely bring thee up again.
So wait, let me push back on that for a second. If God has already made a covenant with this family, why is Jacob so paralyzed by fear?
It is a valid question.
I mean, beyond the obvious intimidation of a massive empire, why does he need God to show up in a vision and specifically tell him not to panic?
Well, his fear is rooted in family history.
Ah, Abraham.
Yes, Abraham, his grandfather, faced a very similar famine decades earlier and fled to Egypt for relief.
And that did not go well.
No, not at all. That descent into Egypt was marked by spiritual compromise, deception, and, well, failure.
Right, he lied about Sarah.
He lied about his wife, Sarah, fearing the Egyptians would kill him to take her, and it brought a curse upon Pharaoh's house. The Egyptians eventually deported Abraham.
Wow.
So Egypt historically represented danger, moral compromise, and a major threat to the covenant family.
So Abraham's past failures in Egypt are casting this long shadow over Jacob's current decision. He is worried history is about to repeat itself.
Yeah, exactly. The only reason Jacob proceeds is the divine guarantee given at Beersheba.
That assurance that God is going with him.
Right. The relocation is not some random migration born out of panic. It is actually the fulfillment of a prophecy given centuries earlier to Abraham.
In Genesis 15, right?
Yes. God had already declared in Genesis 15 that Abraham's descendants would live as strangers in a foreign land.
Oh, right.
This descent into Egypt is a providential step in fulfilling that specific revelation. God is moving the pieces on the board to fulfill his own word.
Okay, so they are moving into a highly structured superpower. They cannot just wander across the border chaotically, setting up tents wherever they please.
No, the Egyptians would not allow that.
Right. The Egyptian border patrol was notoriously strict. I was reading that they kept detailed logs of nomadic groups seeking entry.
Oh, very detailed.
So the family needs a vanguard to establish order and secure legal status. And Jacob makes a choice here that honestly catches the reader off guard. He sends Judah ahead of the group to meet Joseph.
We see this in Genesis 46:28. The text tells us that Jacob sent Judah ahead of him to Joseph.
But wait, Judah. I mean, is this not the same brother who previously suggested selling Joseph into slavery to Ishmaelite traders?
That is the one.
Why trust him with the most critical logistical role in this survival mission? That seems totally counterintuitive.
Well, we are witnessing the irony of grace operating in the biblical narrative.
I love that phrase, the irony of grace.
Yeah, because Judah is the one who previously fractured the family out of greed and jealousy. But over the course of the preceding chapters, Judah has undergone severe humbling and repentance.
Right, he offered himself in place of Benjamin.
Yes, and now he is the one acting as the designated guide, sent before his father to secure their welfare. He is stepping into a mediator role.
And he is not just acting as a human GPS, right? He is not just pointing out the quickest route to Goshen. The language used to describe his mission carries a lot more weight.
Oh, absolutely. The Hebrew text is incredibly precise here. It states Judah was sent to direct his face unto Goshen.
Okay.
The Hebrew verb translated as to direct or to show the way is lihora.
Lehor.
Yes, which is the hitful infinitive construct of the root yara.
Okay, stick with me here, guys.
I know we are getting into the grammar, but it matters. While this verb can sometimes refer to physical navigation, its primary semantic range in the Old Testament carries the weight of authoritative instruction or legal direction.
And this root, yara, is the exact same linguistic root from which the word Torah is derived, right?
Yes, it is.
So Moses, who is authoring this text, is signaling that Judah is acting as an authoritative representative, establishing the legal and structural direction of the relocation.
Precisely. Judah is essentially setting up the legal and administrative framework for the family to settle in Goshen before the rest of the household arrives.
That is amazing.
The march of God's people is characterized by orderly, authoritative guidance. This moment establishes a pattern of restored service for Judah.
The man who proposed the betrayal of the covenant family is now restored and functioning in a leadership role.
Yeah, and this foreshadows his future position as the head of the royal messianic line.
Oh, wow. Okay, so Judah sets up the legal zoning. But all this administrative groundwork is, it is preparing the stage for the emotional core of this migration.
The reunion.
Right. The bureaucracy fades into the background the second Joseph's chariot finally pulls up.
This brings us to verse 29, which is an intensely emotional scene. Joseph prepares his royal chariot and goes up to meet Israel, his father, in Goshen.
And the text specifically mentions his chariot.
Yes, to signal his rank and authority. He is the vizier, the governor of Egypt. He possesses immense administrative might, second only to Pharaoh.
Right.
Yet he personally hastens to meet his father, leaving the capital city to go to the border region of Goshen.
When you look at the Hebrew here, there is a fascinating grammatical shift. The specific language used to describe Joseph arriving is really unusual for a standard human interaction.
It really is. The Hebrew verb is vayera, translated as, and he appeared to him. Yes. This is a nephil, imperfect form of the root ra. And throughout the patriarchal narratives in Genesis, this specific passive reflexive form is reserved almost exclusively for divine self-disclosures.
Like when God appears to Abraham by the oaks of Mamre or to Isaac at Gerar.
Exactly.
The text uses that specific wording to describe a theophany. So by applying it to Joseph, the text is not just saying, Joseph arrived, it is signaling something much heavier.
Applying it to Joseph here elevates his arrival.
Mm.
It portrays him not just as a successful, wealthy son, but as a majestic mediator acting on God's behalf.
Wow.
He appears in his royal vice-regal glory as the exalted mediator of life, entirely devoted to the preservation of the covenant seed. He is the physical manifestation of God's provision for Jacob.
So for Jacob, it is like mourning a child for decades, holding on to the grief of their violent death, only to find out they're acting as the prime minister of the world's strongest nation, arriving in absolute authority to save you from starvation.
The emotional release is immediate and overwhelming. The text states, Joseph falls on his father's neck and weeps there a long time.
Which makes sense. But let me ask you this. We usually picture ancient governors as these hardened, unfeeling statues. Does falling on someone's neck and weeping for an extended period contradict the stoic, emotionally detached leadership expected of an ancient ruler?
Oh, the text offers a sharp critique of Stoicism here.
Really?
Yeah. The narrative lingers on the tears because biblical faith does not view godliness as emotional coldness or detachment.
Okay, I see.
The weeping shows sanctified affection. Joseph can govern millions of tons of grain, confront the sin of his brothers, forgive them entirely, and still weep uncontrollably as a son. True strength is not the absence of emotion.
That is so good. And Jacob's reaction to this embrace is striking, too. He says, "Now let me die, since I have seen your face and know that you are still alive."
Yes.
The Hebrew phrase there is od kahai, meaning you are still alive.
And Jacob's declaration is not one of despair, depression, or fatalism. It is a statement of contented, satisfied faith.
He is at peace.
Right. The unbearable tension of his life has been relieved. He had believed the false report of the bloodied coat for over 20 years. The passage reveals that Providence rules over sorrow and tears.
Yeah.
God's sovereignty does not erase human emotion or tell us to ignore our pain. It heals the wounds caused by decades of deception. The grief that seemed final and absolute is answered by a providence far greater than Jacob could have imagined.
So the tears dry, the embrace ends, and they look around to realize they are in Egypt, the emotional peak passes, and the harsh reality sets in.
Yeah, now the real work begins.
Right. They must figure out how to survive in a hostile pagan culture without losing their distinct identity. So they transition from the reunion to a calculated strategy of separation.
Very calculated.
Joseph gathers his brothers and gives them highly specific instructions before they go before Pharaoh.
Right. Joseph tells them to say, "We are shepherds, keepers of livestock from our youth, and we have brought our flocks and herds." Now, this instruction is explosive given the cultural context of the Egyptian court. To grasp why this matters, we have to understand the Egyptian religious and social worldview at the time.
So why is being a shepherd such a monumental issue to an Egyptian? What is the big deal?
It centers on the Egyptian concept of ma'at.
Mat, M-A-A-T.
Yes, usually spelled with an apostrophe in the middle. Ma'at was the ancient Egyptian concept of truth, balance, order, and cosmic harmony.
Okay.
The entire civilization was built on this premise. The Nile Valley, with its highly predictable annual flooding and settled agricultural cycles, was viewed as the sacred center of this cosmic order. Settled farming, building cities, and maintaining a predictable rhythm of life were considered godly and proper.
So if settled farming represents divine order, then the surrounding desert regions and the nomadic populations who moved through them looking for pasture, they represent the exact opposite.
Right. The desert represented chaos, danger, and ritual impurity. Ancient Egyptian texts frequently show intense disdain for Asiatic nomads.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, referring to them with derogatory terms like the Amu or the Shasu.
Just total disdain.
Absolutely. These nomads moved unpredictably. They did not participate in the centralized agrarian economy. They were viewed as agents of chaos who threatened the cosmic balance of Ma'at.
This cultural reversion is captured in a specific Egyptian word, right? BWT. BWT.
Yes.
And Moses uses the Hebrew equivalent of that word in Genesis 46.34. The word is tuavat, which is translated as abomination.
And that word denotes something ritually unclean, physically repulsive, and socially unacceptable.
So it is strong.
Very strong. When Joseph tells his brothers every shepherd is an abomination to the Egyptians, He is not using hyperbole.
Right.
He is referring to a legally codified, socially enforced taboo.
Yeah.
The taboo was so ingrained that it legally prohibited Egyptians from eating bread with Hebrews or allowing nomadic herdsmen to integrate into their domestic settlement.
Wow. Think about how counterintuitive this is for us today. I mean, when you enter a new corporate environment or move to a new city, your first instinct is to hide your eccentricities so you can blend in.
You want to put your best foot forward.
Right. We try to figure out the local culture and adapt. We want to be accepted. If you are moving to Egypt and your brother is the prime minister, human logic dictates you leverage his high status.
Sure, use the nepotism.
You hide the sheep in the desert, adopt Egyptian customs, put on the right clothes, and get lucrative jobs in Pharaoh's court. Use the connection to your advantage.
Human wisdom demands assimilation for survival. It suggests blending in to avoid conflict and secure a comfortable life.
But that is not what they do.
No.
Mm.
Joseph weaponizes this prejudice. He tells them to lead with their most offensive trait.
It is like purposely putting the most offensive, deal-breaking fact at the very top of your resume to guarantee you get put in a specific, isolated department.
That is a brilliant analogy. He is intentionally putting the deal-breaking fact at the very front of the conversation to guarantee they get isolated in a specific rural region where nobody will bother them.
He uses the host nation's intense disgust as an impenetrable wall. But what specifically are they being protected from?
Well, by remaining socially unacceptable, the family is protected from intermarrying with the Egyptians.
Ah, keeping the line pure.
Yes. They are protected from adopting Egyptian pagan idolatry and losing their covenant identity. If they assimilated and became respectable Egyptian citizens, the physical line of promise would dissolve into the Egyptian melting pot.
The family tree would just disappear.
Within 2 generations, easily. By forcing them to confess their offensive trade, God ensures they remain holy, separate, and intact as a distinct people. The world's hatred actually becomes the mechanism of their salvation.
That is just incredible. The underlying logic here reveals the broader theological framework of how God operates throughout human history. Let's look at the mechanics of providence.
Let's do it.
If God decrees everything and has already guaranteed their safety back at Beersheba, why do Joseph and his brothers need to scheme so carefully about what to say to Pharaoh?
Right.
Why not just walk into the throne room, say whatever comes to mind, and let God handle the details?
Well, trust in divine providence does not abolish human prudence.
That is good. Say that again.
Trust in divine providence does not abolish human prudence. We can understand this through a reformed view of providence. God upholds, directs, disposes, and governs all creatures and actions.
Okay.
From the greatest historical movements down to the smallest detail, everything is governed according to his infallible foreknowledge and the immutable counsel of his own will.
So the preservation of this family did not rely on chance.
No.
It did not rely on Pharaoh waking up in a generous mood.
Right.
The outcome was not a cooperative effort where God hoped the Egyptians would react a certain way.
Right. God utilized the natural biases, the religious taboos, and the cosmic worldview of a pagan culture to accomplish his sanctifying purposes.
He is using what is already there.
Yes. Notice that God does not send fire from heaven to build a literal wall of flames around Goshen.
Right.
He uses ordinary means. He uses chariots, truthful speech, family roles, and the natural prejudice of an ungodly culture to execute his decrees. The providence here is entirely natural in its outward appearance, yet entirely sovereign in its direction.
Which answers the question about why they need to strategize. God ordains the ends, the preservation of the covenant seed in Goshen, but he also ordains the ordinary, practical means to achieve those ends.
Exactly. Presumption claims God will provide while actively neglecting the means he appointed. True faith trusts God while diligently using the means he provides.
Wow.
The family's truthful confession of their despised occupation, driven by their actual life experience as herdsmen, is the exact mechanism God ordained for their protection.
So their careful strategizing and their honest confession to Pharaoh are the very instruments of God's isolating protection.
Yes. Their obedience in the small, practical details is how the massive sovereign plan of God moves forward in history.
The isolation in Goshen was not just about keeping a few dozen people fed for a few years until the famine passed.
No, the scale is much bigger.
Right, it was the required setup for the redemption of the entire world. The patterns established here in Genesis are the structural foundation for the gospel narratives. We are looking at shadows of a greater redemption embedded right here in the text.
We can trace these shadows starting with Judah.
Oh, let's talk about that.
He acts as the forerunner who prepares the way for the family's arrival in the sanctuary of Goshen. This points directly to the ultimate king from the tribe of Judah, Jesus Christ,
Right.
who enters the heavenly holy place as a forerunner for his people, securing their eternal dwelling.
And the parallels between Joseph and Christ are even more striking. I mean, both were intensely beloved by their fathers, both were betrayed by their brothers out of envy, sold for the price of a slave, and cast down into deep humiliation.
And both are exalted from the pit to a position of absolute administrative authority. Joseph uses his supreme authority to provide the bread of life to the very people who betrayed him.
Wow.
He prepares a sanctuary for his family during a time of global famine, anticipating Christ, who prepares a place for his people, ensuring their preservation in a spiritually dying world.
Even Jacob's reaction to seeing Joseph fits this blueprint perfectly. When he says, "Now let me die, since I have seen your face and know you are alive," it mirrors a specific moment in the New Testament.
It directly parallels Simeon in the Gospel of Luke.
Right in the temple.
Simeon holds the infant Messiah in the temple courts and declares that he can now depart in peace because his eyes have seen God's salvation.
That is beautiful.
The pattern repeats. An aged saint sees the physical proof of God's faithfulness and is ready to face death without terror. The tension of waiting for the promise is resolved by the physical presence of the mediator.
And going back to the sheep, the whole strategy of separation hinges on the Egyptians despising shepherds. The world despises the shepherd, but God constantly chooses shepherds. He chose Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He raised David from the sheepfolds to lead Israel.
The abominable shepherd motif anticipates Jesus Christ, the Good Shepherd.
Yeah.
Christ is despised and rejected by the world, considered an abomination by the religious elite of his day, yet he gives his life for the sheep. In Christ, the despised shepherd is also the sovereign king.
Now, someone listening might argue that humans are just great at finding patterns that aren't really there, making connections after the fact. How do we know this is a deliberate blueprint and not just an accidental coincidence of history?
We know it is deliberate because of the unconditional covenants God made to the patriarchs.
Right.
Those covenants require the preservation of a literal physical nation through whom the Messiah would be born. The genealogy matters absolutely.
It is not just metaphorical.
No. If they had assimilated into Egypt, if Judah had taken an Egyptian wife, hidden his sheep, and begun worshiping the Egyptian pantheon, the physical line would have been polluted. The genealogical promise of the Messiah would have failed.
So God was guarding the messianic promise within this specific household.
Yes.
The meticulous, sovereign isolation of the tribes in the land of Goshen was an indispensable step in safeguarding the physical descent of Jesus Christ. Providence protected the promise so that centuries later, the promise could become flesh.
The narrative demonstrates how God governs history. He rules the environmental disasters, the bureaucratic structures of massive government, the cultural taboos of pagan societies, and the tears of a grieving father, all to keep his covenant.
We moved from a starving ancient world analyzing the bureaucratic machine of the Egyptian Middle Kingdom. We watched an orchestrated family reunion where a long-lost son arrives in royal authority.
It is quite a story.
It really is. We saw a masterful use of cultural prejudice, where a despised occupation was weaponized to build a wall of protection around the lineage of the Messiah. God deliberately used the world's disgust and rejection, the severe stigma of being a shepherd, to construct a protective boundary around his people.
Yeah.
So ask yourself this as you go through your day. What perceived disadvantage, cultural marginalization, or social rejection in your own life right now might actually be a hidden sanctuary drawn by Providence? If God can use the prejudice of an ancient empire to save a bloodline, what is he protecting you from by allowing the world to push you to the margins?